Welcome back to the Buffalo Fatherhood Initiative podcast. I'm your host, Antoine Johnson, and we're ready for an exciting episode today. I got a guest for us, really not a guest, I feel a lot more like family, my man Jamil Davis from the Buffalo area. Without further ado, I want to kick it off right to him and want you to introduce yourself to the people.
Well, first of all, giving honor and glory to God, who's the head of my life. Without him, none of this will be possible. Thank you, Antoine, for just, I'm really humbled to share this platform with you.
Absolutely.
Like he said, I'm Jamil. I am from the East Buffalo. I am a graduate of Damon College, which is currently Damon University. I have my master's in leadership and innovation with a concentration in business. I'm also an entrepreneur. I own Brothers of Thunder Entertainment, LLC. We're a faith-based entertainment label here in the Buffalo area. I'm excited to be here because I have been a part of the Buffalo Fatherhood Initiative for about 4 or 5 years now. So, and been able to share and grow in my fatherhood journey, what it is to be a man of marriage.
Yeah, this is gonna be a good one today. Like I mentioned, Jamal just mentioned he's been around for some time. Just about the same amount of time that I've been around with the Buffalo Fatherhood Initiative, that is. And both of us have been primarily kind of raised up in this Buffalo area. Fatherhood journeys are a little different. I talked about mine during some of the earlier episodes where my father was in my life, but then later on, he wasn't that much, right? And he was really kind of uninvolved and so forth, and talked about how like the impact that has. But Jamal, can you share with the people here, what your journey was like around your father growing up and how that impacted you?
Absolutely. June 10th, 1992. My aunt, I was 3 years old. My mother and my father were married. There was 4 of us. I have 3 older siblings. On that day, my aunt knocked on the door. My mother had left and went to the store. She said, "Where's your mother?" She said, well, she went to the store. She said, "Well, when she get home, tell her to call me. Oh, by the way, your father died." Now, as a 3-year-old kid, I had zero understanding of what that meant. Only thing I could remember was that he was helping my grandmother move to Alabama. She was moving from Buffalo to Alabama, and he had given my brothers and I all a hug and said, "I'll be back." And he was never able to make it back on that journey. So that caused me lot of abandonment trauma growing up. I had lacked understanding why that is because, I held on to that promise that he had gave unto me, and it seemed that like it can never be fulfilled now. Right. So,
first of all, I'm sorry to hear that. I think that no matter how much time goes past, some things like we still feel them. We're still human, right? Can you talk a little bit more about how you've taken things from that experience, or the lack of your father, having him there as a result of his passing, and have been able to move forward, heal, and grow as a man, the amazing man that you are today?
Yeah, just it was hard because he also passed away the same month Father's Day is celebrated. So happy Father's Day to the guys out there. So, and my mother, she never wasn't a person to overcompensate, but she did do the best that she could as a parent. But that, like I said, it had a continual deficit to where I would cry just for no reason, and just because I know that's what I wanted, and I would make a promise to myself that when I had children that I would never leave them, and little did I know that that I would break that promise. And because I continued that promise when my children when they were born, my older 2, and I looked at them and I first held them and I made a promise to them that I would never leave
them. You said something really quick, or just a minute ago, about you having had that experience, and sometimes you cry, right? As a man, as a Black man in particular, I think there's a lot of stigma around being able to cry or be emotional or any of that.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think that it does our community a disservice, our families a disservice, and our kids, when we do have them, to always feel like we got to be so stoic, or we can't show emotion and things of that nature. I had an opportunity to read a book called, my goodness, it's by a gentleman by the name of Jason Wilson, Battle Cry.
Oh, okay.
Battle Cry. Jason talks about um, just like from like a scientific standpoint, when we cry, we actually release stress hormones, right? And a lot of times when people after we cry, we kind of feel lighter, right? You ever had an experience where after you just got finished, bawling your eyes out, you like you feel a relief.
For sure.
And I think a lot of times as men, a lot of times while we're so angry and lashing out on people and all this other stuff is because we've never been told that we can feel and have emotions so that we can move forward and just be who we need to be for ourselves and our families. But I digress. Feel free to
No,
continue.
absolutely. I agree with you because I think that our community has the thought that strength is the absence of weakness.
Mm,
When strength isn't the absence of weakness, it's the ability to overcome it.
mhm.
So when we fall into that deficit and we bring that battle within ourselves of I got to be strong and I can't be weak,
Yeah.
it causes us to lash out and be destructive, is for lack of a better term, whether it be from a physical, mental, emotional, a societal, a community based, we can just become destructive. So unfortunately, it was a stigma that I carried. I was called the crybaby growing up. I'm the youngest of four boys. I had to fight for everything. You understand what I'm saying? So um but at some point in times when you're the youngest and the smallest, they're going to make you cry. So it was just that crybaby, crybaby, crybaby stigma. But I've learned that if I can't cry, how do I expect my children to be able to cry?
Yeah. Yeah.
I and because a lot of times we just have these expectations on our children to be able to do things because that's human nature. But if we are preventing ourselves, or if we're stopping ourselves or denying ourselves, we get upset when we our children who mimic us follow in that same action.
Mhm.
So I've learned that not that I'm not going to tell you that I cry in front of my children because I don't, but I've learned that I take that time in those moments, in those spaces when it's required for my release.
Mhm.
And then I also encourage my children, whether it be with me, with their mother, or whether it be with a counselor, that it is okay to have that release.
Yeah.
It is good. It's not even just okay, it's good. It's great to have that release for yourself.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about you were starting to get into it, but your relationship with your children, right? Like, so you talked about growing up, and just some of the emotional pain and trauma around your father and how you felt about that. Now transitioning into fatherhood, tell us more about your journey, right?
So my older two children are 9 months and 2 days apart.
Okay.
I was 21 and 22 when I had them, and at that time, some of us think we grown, we know it
Mhm.
all.
Sir.
And boy, walking around with having two crying babies back to back just was not an easy task. And then on top of that, I made poor choices in my youth to where I was incarcerated at that time.
Mhm.
So not only did that, where my daughter was placed in foster care, my son was out in another one of the suburban areas. So I had no contact. They had no contact with one another, and
Yeah.
then I had to work through this obstacle that I put myself in to, get back to them and fulfill my promises. Because I told you about the promise.
And how long did you have to be apart from them for?
2 years.
Okay.
For total 27 months, so 2 years, 3 months.
Okay.
And then my daughter was actually a little longer because I had custody of my daughter prior to me being incarcerated, and then it was removed from me, obviously, because I was gone. So I had to work to regain custody, and that occurred December of 2019. I finally regained custody of her, and she returned home. So she was gone for about 9 years. She
Okay.
was, yeah, stay with my mom.
Okay. So, and we can talk about this later on, but I'm
Mhm.
sure you can help a lot of brothers out in terms of like how, you rekindle and reconcile a healthy father-child, father-daughter relationship, with the time span or the gap, right? Between not being able to have that bonding time or what have you. So well, we don't have to go there now. So continue.
Yeah. Yeah, so in that 2 year span, like I said, my son, when he was a year old when I left, my daughter was two. Now, my daughter and I, we've always had a very strong bond. She remembered me when I came, I didn't have to miss anything. I would call her because she stayed with my mother. So I would call my mom every day. I would speak to her on the phone. So it was always that excitement of daddy's coming home. And I would tell her that I was at school or whatever.
Okay.
And so my son, he had zero understanding of who I was. He actually thought my brother was his father. So when he first met my brother, he called him dad because my brother and I, we resemble one another.
Okay.
And so when he saw when I met him, I had to introduce to him. I said, he looked around. He said, "Who is this?" I said, "I'm your father." And right away there was an immediate denial. I can tell a denial of me in him.
And how old was he at the
He
time?
was 4.
Okay.
It was an immediate just shut down. It was immediate, and just because um, him being with his mother and his aunts, it was all that he knew. He didn't know how to connect to a man.
Yeah, yeah.
So now my son and I, we really just connected finally last week.
Okay.
Finally last week. And I've been in his house. He's lived with me for the last 8 years. You know, I've been there, haven't missed a thing. Football coach, basketball coach, t-ball coach. My son is on the honor roll, does great things, but we just connected last week.
Okay. All right. So I get tell us more about what you mean by you just connected, because you just described like everything that dads do for the most part, right? And we have this understanding in our fatherhood community that sometimes we as dads can be physically around but emotionally disengaged.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not saying that was your situation,
Yeah.
but I just want I wanted to put that out there as you go into what it means for you guys having connected now.
Yeah, I knew because of I was gone so early that it was the responsibility was only on me to make sure that I did to work to show my children that I'm there for them. And then so with my daughter, like I said, we had a really strong bond. So she was involved in all of those sports except for football, but t-ball and basketball were co-ed teams. So my daughter and I, we just had that bond. My son, he was always just very leery because he was afraid that I was going to leave again. He was finally old enough last week to tell me this.
Okay.
And he was like that. He always had this concern that I was just going to leave and he would not be able to connect to me. So, we, for a while now, we have every Wednesday is family game night.
Mm-hmm.
And then recently, because as your kids get older, get teenagers and stuff like that, to get lives and going through. So for the last 2 weeks, it's just been me and him. My wife, she's a surgical technologist for Mercy Hospital, so her schedule changes is frequent. So for the last few weeks, it's just been me and him. So it's really given us an opportunity where anytime he ever wanted something from me, he always go to his mom first and have her come ask him. Anytime he ever, so when we got to sit down and just talk and just really just play the game, and I got to show him the difference between me being competitive and then me being on his case.
Yeah.
And he got to see that there was a space there where, like, when he was winning, I didn't get upset because he was winning.
Okay.
Like, you know what I mean? Because I think he was a little nervous that if he won the game, I would be angry. I'm like, no, I always want my children to be better than me. I want you to perform better than me.
Yeah.
My job is just to be an uplift for you. So, and then once that happened, man, the dam broke. He said that I was afraid that you would leave again. And I was afraid that, I told you about my father and what I went through. So that hit me like, oh, okay. And now as a person of faith who makes a concerted effort to practice my faith, I could only give glory to the one I know who is, because it was a sense of reconciliation, a sense of healing for my family, because I was not only able to stand there and speak to my son as a man who understood what that was with the little boy within, but as a man who can stand here in a sense of stability and a sense of resilience and a sense of understanding that I am sustainable, that, son, I am here and I'm not going anywhere.
You hitting on something, and I think I struggle with it, so I can relate as a young boy transitioning into manhood, or at least what I thought I was trying to do. I struggle with the fear of rejection and abandonment issues from my father, and is just so I don't want to say interested, but I don't know. I have no words for it. But just to hear how you're describing your son being able to articulate himself and share those things with you, that I'm sure probably wasn't easy for him to admit to you, because he could have thought that you're going to get mad at him or whatever. But so for him to be able to say that, and then you to be able to speak to it in terms of like being a father and reassuring him and all those things are huge. Because again, there are a lot of grown adult 50, 60, 40, whatever guys that still struggle with rejection, or being rejected, and issues of related to abandonment because of the relationship that they had with their father or the lack thereof. So I just appreciate you kind of opening that up. So for men out there who never were able to have the experience that you have with your son, you're able to speak to his, dare we say, father wound, right? That he had at
Yeah,
one
that's
point.
exactly what it is.
What would you say to an adult man who may also be a father in terms of how he can overcome some of his um, issues related to his father if he ever felt abandoned or rejected? Like, what would you say he ought to do?
So it's both sides. It's two sides to that coin. The one when you're the father working with your child,
Mm,
I would encourage them what I did. Every time I thought I was right, I had to tell myself that I was wrong.